Ragamuffin keep on rising to the top. Ragamuffin keep striving in every way. International, what they call we international. When me ride palm rhythm in the move, but the rhythm and I come down crucial. And me ride palm rhythm and then we sit down steady. Body me on the place where they want Jamal skinny. Jump up on the rhythm, make we ride it right. Chat up on the mic and keep it international. Cause anytime we chop a mic, they call we give it a general. When me ride palm rhythm and I move with the rhythm and I come down crucial. And me ride palm rhythm and then we sit down steady. Body me on the place where they want Jamal skinny.
Yes. What is up, everybody? Joshua Casper here with another live stream with Plugin Boutique. Good to see everybody. I see some familiar names as usual. Love to see it. People tuning in from all over the world today for this exciting stream with Universal Audio. I see Houston. I see Colombia, Argentina, Brazil. To the bone, amigo. Who else we got? Let me know in the chat. If you can hear me, let me know in the chat where you're tuning in from, and let me know in the chat what you're most excited to see and hear today. Obviously, we're here with Patrick Aurelio, who is instrumental in making some Universal Audio instruments. I can't help but make puns. Before I bring him on, though, I just have a few announcements. First of all, let me know if my mouth is in sync with my microphone. My phone, which I'm using for the camera, has been shutting itself off and like disconnecting, reconnecting, and I'm concerned about it. So at some point my camera might go blank. I was going to run it through the Wi-Fi, but it was messing up the sync. So let me know if everything is all right, please. And before I even see your answers, I ran in the house. Love it. Fort Worth, Texas. So many people from Texas. Shout out to Texas. Chicago. Yes. UK, wonderful. All right, some quick announcements before we jump in. Bunch more streams scheduled already coming up next week, Wednesday at 10 a.m. UK time, because my guest is in Australia. That's right, David Carbone, the co-creator of Scalar, will be doing another takeover here on the channel, where he'll be showing you how he used Scalar 2 to score a couple video games. It's absolutely wild. Then on the 19th of October, 5 p.m. UK time, I got a special stream that I can't announce yet, but there will be one. Then on the 26th of October, 5 p.m. UK, I'm going to be with Yuhi and then on November 2nd, SSL. So a big lineup coming. So make sure to subscribe, hit the bell, all those things to stay notified, because there's going to be a lot more on top of that happening before the end of this year. So about today's stream, I've already mentioned I'm going to be with Patrick Aurelio. I hope I'm saying his last name right. And and we are going to be giving away 2 Creative Edition bundles from Universal Audio, which I believe has most of their instruments inside of it. But right now, I believe almost all of the instruments are on sale right now in Plugin Boutique for £49 a piece. And most of their effects, or a bunch of their effects anyway, you can grab right now at £39 a piece. So it's a flash sale. I believe it's only a few days. Killian, who's helping me with the stream today, will throw links in the chat, but definitely check those out if you're interested in anything we talk about today or anything Universal Audio in general, because now's the time. And of course, if you purchase on Plugin Boutique, which you absolutely should, you can get a free Audio Modern Loop Mix Lite plugin also. So why not? Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and bring in Patrick now. So join me in welcoming Patrick Aurelio from Universal Audio. Patrick, how you doing?
I'm doing great, and thank you for having me on. It's really a privilege to be speaking with you guys through this venue, and I have hopefully a lot of exciting things to say on behalf of UA.
Well, I'm sure you do, because you and I were chatting quite a bit on our test stream, and of course before we went live today, and I was like, oh, we should save so much of this information. There's so much just cool stories that I can't wait to share with everybody else. Before we do that, though, perhaps let people know a little bit more about yourself and your role within the UA sphere or space.
Sure. Well, let me see now. I've been with UA for about 12 years, and most of that time has been as a product designer for instruments. I've worked on the Minimoog, the Polymax, and Opal. Also the Ravel grand piano. Obviously, UA also has 2 other instruments, which would be Waterfall B3 and Electro, which are wonderful representations of electromechanical keyboards. Definitely worth checking out. But today I'm going to be focusing on Minimoog, Polymax, and Opal. Before I was in this industry, I was a DJ producer. My heyday was actually the heyday of trance back in the late 90s, early 2000s. Had a couple of releases, including one on Ultra, one on Slinky. Some faring well on the charts of the time, which predated the Beatport charts, of course.
All right, yeah. Cool. Well, what are we going to be checking out today specifically? And sort of, if you could just give us a brief overview of what you have in store and planned for your presentation today for the Plugin Boutique community.
Yeah. So first of all, I want to talk about just UA synths in general and what sets them apart from the rest of the pack. Then I do have, I'm going to be talking about Minimoog, and Polymax and Opal, talking about what the history was with those and some of the exciting things from a design standpoint. But then a lot of tips and tricks, a lot of favorite presets, how to get the most out of your sound with these plugins, and even a few mixing tips here and there.
Love it. Love it. So, I mean, without keeping the people waiting, let's go ahead and jump into the DAW and check out the first synth you got for us.
Sounds great. I'm going to start with Minimoog. Minimoog was our first synth, and was definitely an enormous undertaking. We spent almost 2 years capturing every single detail, almost to a fault. If you were to go down to the bass and perfectly tune a bass note, you would find that the upper part is out of tune. It's actually, this is the sound of a well-calibrated Moog. It's not the sound of perfect intonation. And we went to great lengths to get that detail and all the other details into this. And the result is something that I've had experts tell me, this is a visceral thing. You can feel that it's a Minimoog. Or very influential person saying that not only does it sound like a Minimoog, but it fires all those synapses that a Minimoog does. And
Love that.
Minimoog, believe, was his first synth back when he was in high school. So, it's been getting a lot of really good accolades, and there were a lot of hard decisions that went into making this what I believe to be the best sounding emulation of a Moog. One of the things that we did, most of the Minimoogs out there are polyphonic. We made a decision to use as much CPU as we need to, even if that means that it's not polyphonic. So we have a monophonic synth. Yes, you can't play chords on it, but the goal was to make it sound as much like a Minimoog as possible.
Brilliant. Well, let's hear it. I'm excited.
Yeah.
Just before you do that, Patrick, can you slide the UI over to the left ever so slightly? We're just missing the volume section there. Perfect. And also, I forgot to mention how people can win the Creative Edition bundle, which we're going to be giving away to 2 lucky people today. All you need to do is be active in the chat. Ask your questions for Patrick at Plugin Boutique, and I will get those and try to get Patrick to answer them live on the dev stream here today. But with that, Patrick, by all means, let's hear it.
Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is just play some very simple riffs with the default patch. And there's some important stuff about the default patch. So one of the things about the Minimoog, a lot of people think, oh, the Minimoog is a filter with a synth attached to it. But even if you've got the filter wide open and you can't hear the filter at all, those oscillators make a very, very distinct sound. And you can instantly tell if you know Minimoogs from records and if you've played Minimoogs, oh yeah, that is definitely a Mini. That definitely brings back that type of a sound. And that's one of the things that we really wanted to concentrate on. And so you can just have this preset where there's nothing going on with the filter, and you instantly can hear that the way it pushes air without losing harmonics. Okay. And so I'm going to take the default. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying okay. No, I was listening.
I'm going to take the default preset. We've already got a little bit of envelope amount on here, so I'm going to turn the cutoff frequency down. And at the start of a sound with most synthesizers, there's going to be a little bit of a pop, and that's just physics. That has to do with not going on zero crossings, oscillators, what have you. And various synths have various different sounds for that pop. Sometimes it's a very unpleasant non-musical tick. Sometimes it's just a full frequency literal pop. But the Minimoog, even when the attack is down at 1 millisecond, it has this very characteristic thud, and kind of the same way that a piano gets a thud and when the hammer hits the string. So that was one thing, ear-wise, that I just had to make sure, does this Minimoog capture that thud? And it definitely, when you hear I don't know how well that comes out over the podcast, but that's one of the things that gives Minimoogs their punch, is that the beginning of the note just has a tiny little thud rather than a click or nothing at all.
Okay.
And I'm also going to I'm going to turn up the resonance here. And another characteristic of the Moog is that the upper frequencies tend to resonate more than the lower frequencies when you turn up the res on the filter. And what that does is it puts, if you're doing one of these bass sounds where it's kind of a percussive envelope and you've got the cutoff, or you've got enough resonance on it, is that it puts the energy at the beginning of the sound, whereas on a lot of other filters, you'll actually have more resonant energy in the low frequencies than the highs. And you do a percussive envelope, and it just doesn't percussive because it's actually, there's more energy later on in the note. And so this was one of the hallmarks of what makes a Minimoog different. The Minimoog and the 303 both have that characteristic, and that's one of the reasons why just resonant sounds with both of those are just awesome in ways that they aren't in necessarily in other synths. And it's one thing to say, oh, it does this more so in higher frequencies than lower, but there's a very specific way and a very specific characteristic to the way the Moog does that, and we spent a tremendous amount of time getting that right, which leads to, not only do you get the kind of punch that you would get from the Minimoog, but it is literally exactly the punch that we get from this 1977 Minimoog that we emulated. Now I'm gonna, you can use that to get the kind of that infamous Filter Zap sound, and I'm gonna quickly turn this over to a Filter Zap. And you can hear, once again, most of the energy is in the top end. And when you take that down to a classic Filter Zap, and I'm going to actually turn off, there we go, one of the oscillators. There, so you can hear energy in the zap. This is that classic Filter Zap that you hear from records, and with a lot of synths, because there's so much low end, it pulls the energy from the beginning of the zap. The Minimoog is the best synth by far for getting that sound, and also being able to capture that envelope really, really fast and really, really accurately to be able to get these very tiny, almost micro soundy sort of things. That is the hallmark of something that digital synths do poorly, but analog synths do well. It was a point of worry until we actually had it right, that would we be able to get this right? And another example of details that are difficult to do, but really, really make this much like a Minimoog. Exactly, if you will.
I mean, it's pretty well regarded as one of the closest, if not the closest, emulations, is it not? Not to toot your own horn, but yeah, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and I don't even know if it's tooting my own horn. I was not the engineer that made all this stuff. I was tightly looped with the engineer. We worked as a team, finding out, all of these things within filters, oscillators, and all the things that happen between them, how they interact. And no, big shout out to the algorithm engineer that made all this stuff happen. So yes, we definitely do, get a lot of accolades as far as that's concerned. But one thing, I've had a few people say, well, I've got the Moog reissue and it won't match where the knobs are, and it doesn't really do things exactly the same way. And a lot of the reason for that is unit to unit variation. Each Moog is going to sound a little bit different, not too much different, but the knobs will react very differently. The biggest one is the filter envelope, or the filter emphasis, the resonance. Resonant filters are actually very squirrely. They want to do that self-oscillating thing, or they want to resonate very lowly. And you actually have to use a special pot that is the opposite of audio taper to get any kind of a sweet spot. And that sweet spot from one Moog to another can be like an eighth of a turn, a quarter of a turn away from each other. We had 3 Moogs. We had a early 70s Moog, a late 70s Moog, and an early 80s Mini. And I was able to compare all 3 of them, and the late 70s was our golden unit, the thing that we were striving for. And in the end, it is exactly like that 1977 Moog. And I'm in many ways glad that you can tell the difference, that it's that 1977 Moog and not the 1980s one or the early 70s one. It's definitely a hallmark of of how well this was done.
That's pretty wild. I think a lot of people don't, or might not a lot, but some people might not realize how close, you've gotten to that specific unit of that specific year, they might just be like, oh, it's got the Moog, label on there, the logo, and it kind of looks like it, kind of sounds like it. But I mean, if you blind tested a few people and were like, who really knew, they'd be able to tell you not only that it's a Moog, but which year it was fabricated. That's pretty wild.
Yeah, you actually, with the different years, you kind of have to know what the differences are in how they were made. The main thing is the oscillators. The 1980s Moogs had a different design for their oscillators, and the oscillators were a lot more stable. Also, the triangle wave was a much more pure triangle wave. The early the 70s Moogs have extra harmonics in the triangle wave, which is helpful because the square wave isn't actually a perfectly square, so you get a better odd harmonic sound out of the triangle sometimes. But that's another thing, the driftiness of the oscillators. We actually sat the thing out playing one note for several weeks to find out exactly how a Minimoog drifts through temperature changes, through power supply sagging, a variety of different things. And so, when you hear the oscillator drift on this, you are hearing not just some randomizer where you adjust the level of slop. This is exactly what the unit did.
Wow.
So, this is like the classic 2 oscillator sound. And there's a particular lilt that it has to it. Any synthesizer can do obviously that family of sound. But there's a special way that the Moog captures all the upper harmonics, but pushes the air really hard at the same time. Usually, if you're capturing all the harmonics, you're going to have kind of a thin and tinny sound. Going for pushing the air can sometimes lead to something that may be a little bit muddy, but being able to capture both is really, really something. So let me see. Yeah, I love just being able to do just even kind of ambient notes on this. And on this, you can hear that thud a lot better too.
Yeah.
Big multi-oscillator prog rockish sounds. You can also, it's just very instantly. Was that on a record that I heard when I was little? Or?
That's actually happened to me a couple of times already. I was like, wait, is he playing something from something? That's so wild. That's exactly what it is, isn't it? It was just so prevalent in so many pieces of popular music.
Yeah, and with Polymax, we found that almost even more. Minimoog and Polymax, I just find a lot of these sounds are earworms. It's like you hear a sound, and then you want to play that sound from the record that it came from. You want to just play the riff. I'm like, whoa.
Do you want to maybe play a few more of some standout presets from the Moog?
Yeah, I mean, here's a very, very classic Moog filter sweep. And yet again, that's just very much, something that's very representative of Moog. Another thing is, people think of FM synthesis, they think of digital synths like the DX7, but the Minimoog was actually capable of doing FM. You just take the LFO and you put it up into audio range. So low, it's an LFO, and then actually the LFO is oscillator 3. So I'm going to show you. So we've got oscillator 3 tracking the keyboard, and at audio rate, all you got to do is have the mod wheel up, or the modulation amount up, and you'll hear.
That's gnarly. That low note is gnarly.
Yeah, and it's nice because you get that metallic bell-like sound, but it's thick. It's not like a digital synth. Also, it's great for raspy sounds. So
Yeah.
Every once in a while, I'll hear, I'll be on YouTube looking for things about the Minimoog in general. And long after, even after this has been released and I know I went through so much, I'll hear a Minimoog demo and I'll think, that sound, it's thicker than mine. What's going on? I know that I did this. And the last time I heard that, it was a pretty famous producer from the 80s just playing some funk basses. And I look and I'm like, how does he get that sound? I can't, I've been around Minimoogs my whole life. And what happened was that I took a screenshot and I duplicated his patch. Okay. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. And it turned out it was a pulse wave, and usually I think of pulse waves as being very thin, but when you triple it at octaves and then you pull the filter down, they also have the most voltage energy of the waves. So you turn all these volumes up and it overdrives the filter. But I was like, once I replicated the patch, I'm like, nope, it actually does that. So one last thing about the Minimoog before I move on to Polymax is
shout out random videos on YouTube.
Seriously, I thought I was about to get schooled, and then it's like, oh no, thank you, our UA's wonderful Minimoog. I mean, I love this thing so much. I try to take possession of it. What can I say? One of the things that you can do on the Minimoog is you can take the input and route it to the output and get feedback. And it was something that was a point of worry throughout the team as to whether we could actually get that right, that this is a very weird sound. It does things that are very unusual. And so it was actually saved for last. Like, okay, we've nailed everything else, including a model for the preamp. The preamp is in itself, just the audio input has a circuit model in it. So once all that was done, it was time to hook everything up and see, okay, how many more things are we going to have to do? We didn't have to do anything.
Wow.
Just hooked it up. And all of those complex behaviors were just right there.
Love it. Love when that happens.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and so actually, I will mention, this Minimoog does have features that the originals didn't have, but one of the things that we strove to do was limit these extra features to things that would be historically correct. Back in the late 70s and early 80s, there were companies where you would send them your Minimoog, and they'd add an LFO to it, or they'd add a different key mode to it. So all this stuff that's on the bottom, or I should say most of the stuff that is on the bottom it's things that you could have actually, during the production run of the Minimoog, gotten on your physical Minimoog. Where it differs from that is velocity controls. And with the velocity controls, you can get some of those early modular Moog, like Wendy Carlos sort of sounds. If you remember or have gone back to early synthesizer records that were kind of very much classical music influenced, you can hear it just really brings back that sound as well. It's yet another kind of earworm that the Minimoog can do.
All right. Well, I got a few questions if you just want to bang these out before we move on to the next instrument.
Sounds great.
Sweet Mask is wondering, does the Minimoog have MIDI learn?
You know what? UA instruments do not have MIDI learn at this point. It is one of the most requested features, and we were very aware. Even myself as a user, just being aware of that. I can't speak for when or if anything is being done, but we I can tell you, or at least I as an individual really want this, and we definitely hear you loud and clear on that. However, what we have done on this is within the MIDI spec, there are certain things that are suggested for controller numbers. Controller numbers on the filter happen to be up in this, like controller 72, 74, etc. And wherever there was an assignment that was standardized, these are assigned that way. And certain MIDI keyboards already have those assignments in their knobs in the default preset. So I know, at least with M Audio keyboards, it does, and you just turn the knobs and it just works, which is phenomenal. And that's true for Minimoog, Polymax, and Opal. The bottom of the manual, I hate manuals myself, but at the bottom of the manual there is an entire table. We took what the standardized controls were, and then we added on to that to where most of these are actually controllable via MIDI, even though they don't have MIDI learn.
All right. Got a couple of questions here from a couple of people about presets, so I'll just ask them both as one. We got some young guy wondering, are there any plans to release additional presets for these synths that we're covering today? And then JXZ Music is wondering, how many presets are there currently? If you know, you can ballpark it too. Of course, we don't expect you to know exact numbers.
Yeah, Minimoog, I believe, has about 80. Polymax has maybe 170, maybe 150, 170, and Opal, which gives you the most amount of colors, Opal has well over 200.
Nice. I can't wait to check those out. A couple more questions before we move on. Is the Minimoog resizable? That's Native Hendrix wondering that.
Yes, it's the three dots right in here. You can resize 75%, 100%, etc. And there's even and that gets remembered. And I believe this apply to all might actually do that for all of your UA plugins, but I'm not sure.
Well, okay, let's try. I'm always interested in trying stuff out live on stream. We can, so we'll do this. That's not going to be... is the LFO modulation bipolar all the time? October is wondering. Yeah, October.
Well, on the Minimoog, I'm trying to remember. I think that it's bipolar most of the time. I think it's possible that the triangle wave and the square waves are unipolar. I don't remember, but that's kind of the way the circuit was. The oscillators are a sawtooth core, and the triangle converter, I believe, makes it unipolar. I'm not sure. On the oscillators themselves, there are DC blockers, so even if they're all the way up in the positive or negative, they just get balanced out to being bipolar.
Understood.
And with Opal, I'm going to talk about unipolar and bipolar a little bit more. Polymax is always bipolar.
Gotcha. Another question. This is from Sweet Mask, and I suppose they maybe have a Minimoog or are familiar with one. They're saying the filter decay button is not present on the filter part. Is there a particular reason? I'm not sure what that question means, but perhaps you do.
You know what?
We've stumped Sweet Mask. Great question.
Yeah, I'm actually stumped on that myself.
That's all right. We don't.
Yeah, I'll
okay.
have to get back to you on that because I could swear that switch is there somewhere. And those two switches do interact with one another. So yeah, I'm gonna have to
Is there like a hidden panel somewhere, or with advanced feature?
No, it wouldn't be a hidden panel. It's actually I'm stumped because I'm live and my brain is in a million places. So I'll just have to get back to that at a later time.
Okay.
But
Understood.
Any more questions before we move on to Polymax?
Well, let's go ahead and move on to Polymax. And while you're pulling that up, welcome everybody. We're here with Patrick Aurelio from Universal Audio, checking out some of the synths that he's had a hand in creating. And we're going to be giving away 2 incredible creative edition bundles, I believe they're called, from Universal Audio, which contain, I believe, all of the synths we're going to be talking about today and more. And all you have to do to be able to win those is be active in the chat, ask your questions for Patrick at Plugin Boutique for that, or just be a nice person, and we'll select some names at random, and then Patrick will select the final winners. The final winners at the end of the stream, double blind giveaway, as we normally do here on the channel. All right, up next, Polymax.
All right. So with Polymax, we took, Polymax harkens back to old Prophets, Oberheims, and Jupiters. And what we did was we looked at features and circuits, and we mixed and matched to basically create our own distinct sounding polysynth. And we took a lot of feedback from people, inside and outside the company, doing kind of blind taste tests with prototypes that we had made of a lot of these circuits. And so it was an opportunity to build a polysynth in kind of a wine tasty sort of a way, as opposed to the originals were definitely built just simply based on the technology that was available. So another thing about Polymax is we really worked hard on ease of use. We looked at not only polysynths but monosynths like the ARP Odyssey to figure out, well, with very, very few knobs, you can get a lot of color out of an ARP Odyssey. ARP Odyssey may not, when you compare an ARP Odyssey to a Minimoog, the Moog sound as an institution, the ARP Odyssey can't do that institutional Moog sound, but you can get a lot more color out of it, and it's the same size synth. So we wanted to make it so that if you're a seasoned synth person, you're programming super fast. And if you're not, and you're really new to programming, the programming comes very easily. So with Polymax, I'm going to just actually do this thing that I do every once in a while of showing people how quickly you can go from the default patch to something that may be really quite useful in your track. So I'm going to start with the default patch, and that is not the default patch. Oh, that is still Minimoog. How about that? Here we go. And where'd my default patch go?
It's gone. It's the curse of the
It is
live
really
stream.
gone.
Default patch just disappeared. Man, it would never happen otherwise.
Oh yeah, wait a minute. Let me. Oh, I know. It's because it's called init. There we go.
Nice.
All right. So the default patch is as simple as it possibly can be. One sawtooth wave, no motion on the filter whatsoever. And with this, even this was another thing where the sound of the oscillator without anything going on with the filter was really important to capture. And even this sound is kind of an earworm. So I'm going to take this sound and in what I think is going to be 1 minute or less, turn it into a classic synth brass sound. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to darken it using the cutoff. And obviously, it's not there yet. So I'm going to give it a little bit of envelope, which is right down here. You can, cool thing about the envelope is that every stage of the envelope has its own LED indicator. So like, attack rising over time, decay falling over time, you can see exactly how things are how things are changing over time. So we already have something that sounds kind of like a brass section. It's kind of cool. Just by adding some envelope, adjusting the attack and decay. Now that's not necessarily that's not enough to make an exciting brass section sound. So what I'm going to do is make it sound like more than one brass instrument. And I'm just going to add in oscillator 2. You've got oscillator 1 here, oscillator 2, and well, right now it's doubled at the octave, which is not what you want. So we go from -12 to 0. And it's kind of the sound of 2, but what we need to do is... There we go. Let's give it... And boom, in a minute or less, you've got a synth brass sound.
I mean, that's right on the money. Absolutely. I got a question about the envelope sliders. Are they lighting up in real time with where the like the play cursor would be going over the envelope if it were actually laid out on the screen? What's the deal with the lights there?
So,
like, does it take? I guess my question is, like, does the attack stay lit up for the length of time the attack would be, and then the decay will light up as soon as it would hit that section of the envelope?
Yeah, I'm going to give it a slower envelope so you can see exactly what happens. So it'll stay as long as it's in the attack mode, and it will rise. And then this will stay as long as it's in decay mode, and it will fall.
Right,
and
right,
then
right.
from there, you'll see the decay, and then you'll see the release. So... There we go.
Yeah. Okay, that's what I thought it was doing. I just wanted to make sure my mind wasn't playing tricks on me. That's cool. I've never seen that before. That's super cool.
Yeah, neither had we. I believe it was the GUI designer that said, "Hey, why don't we put separate LEDs on each and have each one just do that?" And it was just a stroke of sheer brilliance, because it does make, for people who are just getting into synths, the envelope can be actually the hardest thing to figure out.
Yeah, when it's on like a slider like that, I could see. I mean, the like the UI ones where you can actually see the envelope. But I mean, that's a really cool feature. I always love when something looks cool, but it's also giving you actionable information about whatever it is you're doing, and that's definitely doing that in a unique way. Shout out to the designer there, for sure.
Thanks. Yeah, we were all looking at ways that we could tell people what's going on, but also not hit people in the face with it. There are, I won't mention names of synths that I feel like are eye spam, if you will. And so one of the things, every indicator LED here will also tell you what's going on. So here I'm adding LFO to the waveform, and you can
see it slowing down. See it. Yeah.
Right. And you switch to envelope, and you can see the same thing with the envelope LED. And that way it tells you what's going on, but it doesn't hit you in the face with it. You can spend your brain space listening rather than looking.
How about we go through some of your favorite presets? And you're a very talented keys player, so let's hear it. Let's hear it in action. I mean, you were playing some stuff for me earlier that I was absolutely blown away by.
Oh, well, that was when I was playing guitar, right?
Well, I mean, I was going to save that as a special treat for the end of the stream, but I mean, we might, everybody, get a special solo. Was it flamenco? guitar session by Patrick.
Yeah,
At the
you
end.
know what? Anybody who knows flamenco for real would look at me as being a complete poser, but people who don't know it are, often think it's pretty cool.
Well, we'll hang on to that and see if that happens at the end of the stream.
All right,
But
I'll tell you that I can tell you that we won't have time for that. So yeah, as far as that synth brass thing, so this is a very specific patch attack brass that I very much tailored towards a preset on one of the synths. Maybe it was a Prophet or something like that. I'm going to switch over to this ARP sound right here. And one of the reasons why I'm showing this arpeggiated sound is that I want to talk about the effects for a minute. The effects are all modeled. And the goal with the effects was that not only does it include effects, but they're effects that you would keep. A lot of times with synthesizers, you'll listen to the preset and turn the whole thing to dry and then use your DAW
bypass it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's a pretty common thing. But we wanted to make sure, using UA's existing technology, to make the effects something that you'll just keep. Make them that good. And part of that was the chorus and the flanger are analog modeled. They are bucket brigade chorus and flanger. And, going back to taste testing, built-in choruses on synths are usually for single oscillator synths to try and fatten them up. It's not really so much a effect per se, but it was an inexpensive way on lower end synths, and those choruses were of the quality of a pedal. And what we found was that if we wanted to do something that was similar to the built-in choruses on synths, what it would do is it would muddy up sawtooth waves. It would kind of betray the crispness that you would get with a high-end polysynth. So what we did, we used an analog modeled chorus and flanger, bucket brigade, but the higher bandwidth bucket brigade that you'd find in a rack mount unit. And that's where you're getting on this, where it definitely has that chorus sound, but it's not tinny like a digital chorus, and it's not dark like the chorus on built-in chorus or a pedal chorus would be. And it was the perfect match. So I'll leave with that. Calculation, which is just a very simple effect, just shows how crisp the resonance of the filter is, and also how punchy the modulation speed is, because these are obviously kind of square wavy modulations, and it's doing that very rhythmically, tightly, and without clicks and pops.
Yeah, it sounds super crispy, even on the stream.
And cool, yeah. And Candidate was kind of a candidate for the default patch. Every polysynth has to have that just very that simple two oscillator but nothing else type of a sound. And I will not play that riff.
Trying to get me demonetized.
So this let me see. I'm gonna play this because it's a pad that uses a square wave, and the square wave is really like the most underrated thing for pads, and I'll just really quickly show.
Lovely. Let's have it. Can you play a few more of those pads? I mean, let's really let it shine here.
Yeah.
Those sound great.
So my favorite pad is preset number 1, which is
that would make sense. Didn't you make most of the presets in there?
I I made at least 100 of them. Yeah, probably about 70 or 80% of the presets I made, and it was partially because it's so quick to make presets. During the development process, every time the engineer would pass a build to double check a feature, 10 more presets would come out. And another part is that my coming of age was the era of the polysynth. I love 80s funk and 80s synth pop, and all that stuff was really during that period where the sound of a synth was the sound of a polysynth. And then digital synths and sampling kind of took over after that. And then, of course, with the early rise of the rave scene, then pawn shop analog synths kind of brought it back forever.
I've got a question. Question for me. Did you make any presets in the process that you did not include in the synth that you were like, I got to save that one for me?
Oh, that always happens. And also, after the synth is released, I just keep making presets. For instance, like that really fat Minimoog sound. The synth had been out for a couple of years, and out of a momentary sense of panic, I came up with this great patch, and I love it. Maybe someday it'll actually be included in either the factory or some other pack.
Nice. All right, let's check out a few pads, maybe a few leads, Plex. I mean, I really want to hear the versatility of the Polymax.
Yeah, absolutely. So with this one, I really wanted to get as kind of thick as a pad could possibly be. So lots of pulse width modulation, lots of chorus, and still, all the way through, getting as thick as some of the modern synths with unison effects, but doing it all with old analog techniques.
Love it.
Let's see now. Oh yeah.
That is buttery. I like
I
that
love
one.
Ambient music, and I think I was actually listening to the end of Talking Heads Burning Down the House when I thought, oh, we need something like that.
Shout out Talking Heads.
Yeah. Actually, that was one of the things I started going back to, a lot of these things from my childhood, that because they were really great examples. For instance, I've got this thing right here, which is a very basic staccato percussive type of a sound. But then when you hear it in context, it's, oh yeah, that's another earworm. So let me see. Oh, and I want to show you Flange Pad because this really, I was talking about analog versus digital flanging and chorusing. This will show the subtlety and the beauty of an analog flange.
That sounds fantastic. Chat, someone timestamp where this just happened, because my good friend Simon Love is absolutely going to love that sound. He's a huge proponent of the flanger, and he needs to actually check that out. So write down what time that happened and put that as a comment after this is archived, please, if you could do me a solid. Thank you.
All right. This one is so huge mana. It is inspired by the Polymoog Vox Humana preset, which is one of the just very easily distinguishable presets from that era.
They all sound wonderful. They all sound so good.
Awesome. And then we've got Instaprog, which that you've got to have that thing that you can solo on, and harkens back to even like before my era, before in more of a classic prog rock type of a sound.
That's when the drums come in right there.
Seriously, big testimony to the sound of that 2-pole filter right there.
Yeah, that is nice. Was there anything else you wanted to cover with the Polymax before we move on? I do want to get to Opal, and I know you're busy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me do very quickly. I want to briefly talk about the FM in Polymax.
All right.
I'll always talk about analog FM. It's one of my... I seem to study analog FM a lot. A lot of the polysynths had FM as well. It was usually the exponential type of FM that a Minimoog would have. And that's got a lot of problems. You turn up the FM knob, the synth will instantly go out of tune. A lot of these chips had pins for linear FM, which would be a little bit better than that, but they weren't used because it's much cheaper to pipe the FM through the same path that the keyboard and the envelope and stuff like that are on. And even with linear and FM on a synthesizer, there are just some serious drawbacks. You don't get as many harmonics as you do with digital FM. But what we decided to do with Polymax is we made it linear FM like what you would find on a modular. So it's not DX7 style, which is called phase modulation. It is linear FM, but we didn't model any of the shortcomings, so that it's just all timbral goodness. It doesn't go out of tune or anything like that. So I'll start with bell sounds. So you get this sound that's a little bit thicker than like a DX7 bell because you're using really good analog modeled oscillators, but the tuning is much more easy to handle. Chord cutter, this one seems to be, I see this on the socials a lot because people love big stacks. This does have a unison mode. It is the old school analog unison mode, but
yeah, that's the trancey vibes right there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And now,
Patrick,
you can probably...
Sorry to jump in here. You had a perfect segue there. Someone just asked if you're on socials. You mentioned you see it on socials. Is there a place where people can follow you and sort of what you're getting into on the day-to-day in the music world?
You know what? I don't maintain it as much as I should. But my DJ producer name back in the day was Patrick Scott, and you can find Patrick Scott on Facebook. But also, if you just type in Patrick Scott Aurelio, my last name, the three names, you should be able to find me on both Instagram and Facebook. So Patrick Scott and then Aurelio.
How bad was my pronunciation of your last name, by the way?
Well, you know what? I am actually adopted Italian, and I pronounce my own name very poorly.
Okay. So
your pronunciation was just as good as mine.
Oh, perfect. Wow, that makes me feel good. Nice.
I like to mess people up by telling them that, well, it's easy. It's got all 5 of the vowels in it and only 2 consonants.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna segue out of Polymax with this particular preset because it shows kind of FM doing an ambient sort of thing, which I have a real soft spot for ambient sounds, in case you couldn't already tell. But the hall reverb on this is from a very famous hall reverb from the late 70s, early 80s, and it just does such great deep cavern reverbs. You can there's so many synth demos that you see online. Look at this great analog synth that I have, and then the whole demo is so drenched in reverb that you're hearing more of the reverb. What that proves to me is that people just love running synths through large cavernous reverbs, and so we had to do that justice. And so
Yes.
all right, and so that's pretty much what I wanted to say about Polymax.
Wonderful. Well, we can keep moving. Everybody
Yeah.
that's joining us and joining us late, remember to be on time. We're here with Patrick Aurelio. Yeah, I said it right.
Yep,
I said it
Aurelio.
incorrectly correct. From Universal Audio, we're checking out some of the synths that he's had a hand in making from Universal Audio. All of these synths are on sale right now in Plugin Boutique. Definitely check them out. And we're going to be giving away 2 lucky people copies of the Creative Edition bundle, which has all of these synths and much more inside of them. It's a huge prize. Shout out to Universal Audio for allowing us to give these away. We'll be doing that at the end of the stream. To be entered to win, all you need to do is be active in the chat at Plugin Boutique with your questions. I see a lot of questions in the chat that aren't getting the at Plugin Boutique. It's really hard because of how fast the chat is moving to see those. So just go ahead at Plugin Boutique with your cues, and we'll try to get Patrick to answer them live on the stream. Patrick, Opal, up next. Let's do it.
All right. So Opal is very much a 21st century synth, in the vein of, the most popular synths of these days have lots of features. They have lots of modules. You can pull a lot of colors out of them. And what we wanted to do with Opal was to have our entry into that world of synths, but at the core be using our analog modeling. And so you get this modern sound, which, when you hear it, it can be a little bit, it's exciting timbrally, but it can also be a little bit thin and hollow. But you get this with the lushness and the thickness of our analog modeling. So that was the starting point for Opal. But we also have these features that morph in ways that other synths don't, and hence, it's referred to as Opal morphing synthesizer. Now with the oscillators, which can either be analog modeled or wavetable, it does the morphing, and oh wow. And morphing wavetables have become, pretty much standard fare in modern synths. But we took it a little bit further than that. We actually took it a lot further. And our filters are completely morphable. So I'm going to go over to the filter page here, and I'm going to turn the cutoff down a little bit so that it's easy to see. You're seeing the knob value, the clearest, and then also the modulated value. We've got key scaling. And we're still playing. Here we go. So you can see what's going on with key scaling simultaneously. So here we go. We're going to put this to the middle. So our state control, our filter mode control, is continuously variable, which, we're not the first to be continuously variable, but there are a couple of things going on with this. One is that it wraps. So if you're adding a modulation source to it, that modulation source can do anything pretty much. It's never going to stop. And another thing about it is that, and very important, is that you have both continuously variable filter mode and slope. And the way these vary and the way they morph together is actually the way they would morph together in an analog synth. So it's not a pure digital, I'm interpolating from one filter shape to another. There are kind of anomalies and little bends and curves in how it looks. I mean, you can see, like I've got a notch filter going on here, and it's doing all these really crazy things as you go through the slope. And so these things together make for a filter that really does a lot of unique things. As a matter of fact, if you've got it down at one pole for a bandpass filter, there's no such thing as a one-pole bandpass filter, so you just get nothing.
Do you have a patch like on deck where that you can kind of show us that in action, the whole wrapping all the way around?
I certainly do. This patch is really meant to showcase the morphing, and you can actually, you can see the modulated wave going around. And so this is another big lush pad.
Love it. Such a unique sound.
Yeah, that was I made that patch very early on. I wanted to show people within the company and some of the other people who are in the secret fold what this thing could do. And yeah, just always happy with this particular thing. And then we've got just a couple of other patches where you can hear the morphing. And then kind of a pizzicato that sustains itself using the morph. So that's the morphing filter. But what we wanted to do with Opal was to make this as fluid of a synth as possible, and the morphing goes as far as the LFOs too. So you don't have a standard selectable shapes with the LFO. You've got here, let me go back to the default preset. And I'm going to actually, I take that back. I'm going to down here, pull the res all the way up. There we go. Okay. Let's go back to the filter page. There we go. Okay, so instead of having a basic number of shapes, you have a continuously variable triangle into sine and then down into square. And I forgot that it was filter 2 that actually does this here, that's actually modulating here. And then to get your sawtoothish sort of waves, there's a tilt control. And then instead of having just one sample and hold random shape, we have a degree of randomness control. So I'm going to turn this up a little bit. And then, of course, you change this to a square wave. So when you look at all of the pliable controls that are in the oscillator, the filter, and the LFO, you can see why we call it morphing, a morphing synth. This gives you, it just, everything becomes kind of like your sound becomes like a modeling clay that you can shape any way that you feel like shaping it.
Yeah, I'd say for some reason I'm getting like biological vibes. Like it's, you know what I mean? Like it's just, it feels very fluid. I suppose that's all the morphing that's happening within the synth. And obviously once you start morphing the wavetable, you got the filters, you know, everything else that's routable. It's very, very cool. It's organic. Organic, I think that's the word I was looking for there. But
that's really what we strive for. And I'm gonna show some patches that definitely flaunt how organic this synth can be from the morphing and just from the general sound. So I'm going to go back to default and you know, once again it has that sound where, you know, much like Polymax, just right from the beginning, it's one of those earworm sounds. But the sound of the sawtooth from Opal is a little bit bitier. Polymax has a VCA model, and that gives it a little bit of a darker, warmer vibe than what Opal has. We wanted that kind of straight from the oscillator type of a sound. And so from there, I'm actually going to use that sawtooth wave. One of the things that I found, there was we had hired a few people who were, you know, experts with drum and bass, dubstep, what have you, and you know, we for sound design, and we found that we weren't getting as much of those type of sounds as we wanted out of them. And I asked one of them, and he's like, "But that sawtooth wave, I can't get enough of it." And so, you know, here's a good patch that just shows just how wonderful this sawtooth wave can be. This is definitely, you know, it doesn't have the extra warming stuff that the that Minimoog and Polymax have, but it's capturing all the harmonics without ever being tinny.
Patrick, can I get you just to move the UI a little bit to the left on your screen?
Sure. It's a recurring theme.
Yeah, it's all right. That's perfect, though. Thanks.
And you can hear, like, it's perfectly capable of doing, you know, neuro basses and stuff like that.
Yeah, I would say that's like the more modern sound that I've heard so far. You know, do you have a few of those perhaps that we can play for the people? Oh wow!
Yeah, here's a.
Are you able to import your own wavetable? Someone asked that. I'm also curious. I forget who asked it though.
You know, that's another one of those. It's super, super requested, and you know, I definitely wish that it could. Once again, I cannot comment on what may or may not happen or when, but it's something that we are very conscious of the desire for.
Fair enough.
And so it's perfectly capable. It's got, you know, multi-segment, envelope, LFO, what have you. And, you know, articulating these sounds, it has the high-res wavetables that people would expect from a 21st century synth. But it also has so much more, obviously, with all the other morphing features and stuff like that. And one thing I wanted to mention about the multi-seg is that, you know, you don't necessarily have to use all the complexity that's in it. You can always just load a template of like a regular LFO or an envelope. And a lot of people have requested, well, could you have adjustable envelope curves? But if you assign the multi-seg to a filter and you just load up the template, you've got this right here. You've got the adjustable curves. The hardwired envelopes they're analog modeled, and the hardwired connections are the super fast connections, just like what's in the Minimoog. So, we have this through the mod matrix, and we also have the hardwired connections, which will have a little bit more of an analog vibe to them.
Patrick, while you're searching for the next preset, someone was wondering if we could check out maybe the matrix page. Well, they asked if there is a matrix, and I see there's a matrix. Yeah. There you go.
It's right here. Yeah, and we've got your typical source, destination, what have you. On some mod matrices, you've got a lot of complex math that you can do, but we found that the most common math that people really want is to do, I want to say multiplying, but kind of subtracting inwards as you multiply, the way normal velocity controls work. And so this was the specific math that we did. And I don't remember the exact equation, but it's we kept it very easy. Modulate via. We also have an offset. So one nice thing is that you can actually mute, which is really helpful. All right, so let's. One other thing about Opal, which is quite cool and quite underrealized, is that in the insert effects, you have these comb filters, comb plus and comb minus. And by running noise through either a burst of noise or long noise, you can get these rudimentary physical modeling sounds. And the beauty of rudimentary physical modeling sounds is that they tend to be very otherworldly. They tend to sound kind of like something, but kind of not like something at the same time. So I'm going to show you something that is sort of realistic. Kind of a solo violin sound. But then when you get into some of the other ones, like the string section, it feels like this other thing. It feels like what would a string section sound like on Mars?
Love it, though. If that's what it sounds like on Mars, I'm ready to go.
I can only wonder if it would be... No, a string section wouldn't be higher pitch with the smaller atmosphere. Less gravity. Who knows what a string section would actually sound like?
In space,
a lot of...
no one can hear your strings.
There we go.
That's great.
Let's see. One of the things I like best about Opal is just the sound design possibilities for weird sounds. And how far, Opal is pure synthesis only. There's no samples or anything like that. And just how far you can take pure synthesis with Opal. There's a lot of very modular-ish things that you can do with Opal as well. Like here, I'm going to hold a chord.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not really an arpeggio. It's an LFO that's being modulated by key scale. And all sorts of things that feel like they're random you can do with Opal. Oh, here's another. When you use comb minus, you get this more of a fluty sort of a sound.
So cool. So very, very versatile, I'd say.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And then, more kind of unusual stuff. This uses wavetables that scan through the Fibonacci sequence and scan through the harmonics that are just prime numbers. And the combination of these two sweeps give a very otherworldly type of a sound.
So what you're saying, Patrick, is that's the sound of the universe.
That's right. You want this is a perfect soundtrack sort of a sound.
Yeah. It's also got the story behind it,
Yeah, exactly. I think that John Chowning, the inventor of FM, if you go as far as to look for his actual recordings, he used the Fibonacci sequence a lot, as well as some very innovative things working with space that you still don't really see very much. Here's so Opal does have FM. This FM is phase modulation. It is actually DX7 style FM, but once again with analog model oscillators, and you can do things like, here's a just. Hyper realistic.
It sounds great though.
And one of the things that I love the most is just how, as I was saying, how lush it can sound.
Yes.
And so here's another one of the more lush sounds.
Give us some more lush. The chat is absolutely loving the lush, and so am I, to be honest.
All right. So this pretty much on any synth that I do any kind of sound design for, I will always do a patch called Doubt.
Okay.
And it comes from a track called Sense of Doubt that was a collaboration between Brian Eno and David Bowie, and I just love that one track so much that pretty much, if you look at any of these synths and you find the Doubt preset, that's where it comes from.
Nice.
And from that, I came up with this distant fifths patch. I hear people playing the distant fifths patch all the time. It feels like a distant fifths has become like an Opal signature sound. And it's especially fun when you're using the velocity.
All right, that's the patch for our 80s sci-fi horror where we go try to play strings in space.
There we go.
That's perfect. That gave me such like nostalgic vibes right there. That's great.
So I'm going to go through there and and one thing that I do see in people demoing Opal on the socials is that they go through all the reverbs and they go through AlienVerb and they're kind of like, oh yeah, okay, AlienVerb, yeah, it's kind of tanky. I don't understand. AlienVerb was designed so that when you modulate it, really, really crazy things happen. So we were talking about sci-fi horror in space.
Yeah, I mean, I'm feeling a theme here. I'm thinking this is going to happen, Patrick.
All right, so I've got this patch here that's called Even Scares Me, which is just a tiny blip of noise going into AlienVerb. So AlienVerb is great for modulation. Also, when you turn this feedback control up, it saturates the way an analog delay will saturate. You can do infinity plus feedback on this. So I'm going to play Even Scares Me. So that'll...
Oh, I like that bit there at the end.
Yeah, it just hangs. There we go. Hold for a Wild Ride. This is another one that...
What a great name.
So it's hard to tell just from selecting it, but AlienVerb really, really lives up to its name.
What other effects are built in? Can we have a look at the list again? Oh, quite a few.
Sure. Yeah, the compressor, Comp 76, I kind of wonder what that is. It's definitely based on the 1176. Then just a variety of delays, tape delays separated out, various distortions, comb flange. Then we also have a stereo ensembler that's a quadrature style ensembler, similar to what would have been in vintage string machines.
Love it.
And then definitely check out these spring reverbs. All right. So one last thing. I'll quickly talk about the multi-seg. It's actually hard to demo this in real time, but each segment, if you want to use this as something more complex than an LFO or an envelope, each segment, if you put the modulation amount at 100, it snaps to semitones. You've got a 24 semitone range, so you're already in this place that's very similar to a step sequencer. And if you look up here, these are actually the multi-seg can send gates, and when you pull a gate to 0, nothing happens. When you pull it all the way, it'll actually be a legato over to the next gate. And this is obviously for serious synth nerds here.
By all means.
So, and then everything, we have kind of not just a modulation matrix, but kind of a gate matrix. So you can actually have this free running. You can have the multi-seg triggered by note on by one of the LFOs, or you can have it triggered by the other multi-seg, which is kind of cool. Same thing, if you go into the LFO page, the LFOs can be triggered by the multi-segs, etc. So you can get into, in some ways, this is much closer to being full modular than semi-modular because of this gate matrix. And that's, for people who are serious sound design nerds, it can be endless fun.
It's Morphception. That could be the name of our space flick.
There we go.
or the Mighty Morphin synthesizers.
Whoa. All right. So, these are the topics that I wanted to cover. So I'm definitely interested in some of the questions.
All right, we got a few more questions here. Everybody, we are wrapping up after we get through these questions. So if you want to be entered into the giveaway, now is the time to hit the like button. First of all, if you haven't yet, and send us your questions or just be active in the chat, because we will be selecting 2 winners to win the Creative Edition bundle from Universal Audio at the end of the stream. Questions. Are you familiar with the clap format of plugins?
Yeah, I've read the spec. I haven't really played around with it very much, but it is a very exciting, very flexible spec.
Okay. So Jules Len was wondering what you think about it, and there you go, Jules. That's the answer. I haven't heard of it yet. I need to obviously read up. Can you manipulate the modulation and save it as a new preset? That's Mark Johnstone wondering that.
Manipulate the modulation and save it as a new preset.
I guess like if I maybe save how you've modulated, but I'm assuming you would just save the preset as opposed.
Yeah, pretty much all you can do is save the preset at this point.
And did you get any inspiration when designing the interface? Did you have any input on the interface design, or is that a question better left for someone else?
So my input on the design, I created a mood board for the design that had kind of 3 sections. It had really cool gear, and then another one was kind of retro sci-fi, and then a third one was modernism. I'm a big fan of modernist architecture, furniture, etc. And so from those 3, it was a collaborative brainstorm among the GUI designer. There are people within the management structure who are designers themselves, and just collaboration all around, basically, after that.
Nice.
One of the things that I can say, is kind of my personality coming out is we wanted the knobs to be organized in a way that looks playful instead of kind of being a grid. But this was really so many people contributed good ideas for this.
I don't want to beat the space theme we have going here too much, but it kind of has like spaceship panel vibes. If I could be so bold there in the center.
Well, okay. Well, I'm going to go into personal history for a second and tell you how influenced by space I am. Joe Aurelio, my adopted father, was an electrical engineer for NASA for the Apollo and Gemini missions, and I've seen Saturn V's launch. I've been inside the vehicle assembly building. I've been inside Gemini mission control. So you cannot take the space out of me. As a matter of fact, my first day of interviewing at Universal Audio was right when the Apollo came out, and they were doing these little blurbs of from mission control in Apollo 11. And so during my interview, whenever something like that would come up, I'd tell that story of well, yeah, I'm very connected with this, and they were looking for somebody on the design team for Apollo, and obviously I got the job. I don't know if that was cheating or not.
Oh, that's pretty amazing. We can keep going here. I got a question that's a pretty good one. Oral Flow is wondering, is there MPE support in Opal?
There is not MPE support. That is another one where we do get a variety of requests for it, and both MPE and clap really expand what a synthesizer can do, and it's something that excites me very much. But once again, I can't really comment on what might be happening in the future. That's
pretty standard, but we wouldn't be doing it right if we weren't asking the question anyway.
No, ask away.
We always want to get you too. You know what I mean? We want to slip up. That's what we're looking for here. This is the whole hour and a half. I'm just waiting for you to let slip something. Of course not. That's obviously not true. McMadman is wondering. By the way, great name, McMadman. Oh, Mad McMahon. I'm sorry, I read that wrong. Can you save your customized multi-segs?
Cannot save customized multi-segs. That is a good question. That's another thing that does get requested a lot. For now, all we have are the templates that we have created, which would include LFOs, envelope generators, a couple of sequencers, and some pumping effects. Which, of course, you have to have pumping effects.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, Patrick, do you think maybe you could play us a little of the piano while we give the people one last opportunity to get entered into this giveaway? Who could just hear it's the Ravel, right? That's what
Yeah.
Maybe give us a little ballad, a little with a little bit of space influence to kind of play us out. Everybody, this is your last opportunity to, 1, hit the like button to help the stream, 2, be active in the chat so you can be entered to win this incredible opportunity to win a bundle of Universal Audio plugins. It's a lot of plugins, and it includes everything that we've covered, I'm pretty sure, here today. So you want to be entered to win. All you had to do was say something in the chat. And let's just hear a little bit of this Ravel.
Yeah. And I'm going to introduce this as well. The thing about Ravel is, I can talk about how authentic it is and everything like that. But the thing to know about Ravel is just put that sustain pedal down, because the way sympathetic resonances happen in Ravel is very, very different. It's definitely months and months were spent on physical modeling for how sympathetic resonances work. And so I'm going to be, spacey.
Patrick, before you do it, please move that UI over just a little bit to the left, because it's a beautiful UI. I love the Ravel, how the A is missing the arm there, by the way. But yeah, feel free to jam for maybe a minute, whatever you want to do. Kind of play us a little melody, and we'll wrap up the stream right after that.
Sure.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, people all over the world, put some fire emojis in the chat. That was amazing, Patrick. That's our credits. That's our end credits music. That was beautiful. Was that off the cuff? That was just something completely made up just now?
Well, actually, I kind of threw a couple of things that I always play together. It's kind of it's been some version of the thing that I test Ravel with, but this is me faking it as best as I can. Here I am in
please.
A minor, and I'm not playing a lot of black keys, and it's kind of the equivalent of the kid playing a solo in a guitar solo in Guitar Center. It's that one thing that I can actually sound good with.
Well, I mean, it was amazing. Lots of fire emojis in the chat. That's young people speak for. That was incredible.
Oh yeah.
Well, listen, it's been. Oh, go ahead.
I've got one more thing. Is that I made this demo track that's very much that electro sound that I think in the Beatport charts is now being called Detroit electro. But it's just a style of music that's been around since the Moog Polysynth era, and it just keeps moving. It changes its name, what have you, but it's a genre that will never die. And so I can just kind of hit play on this as well if the 30 seconds that it lasts.
Let's do it.
All right.
Ooh, I like that. Yeah, that was hype.
All right.
Well, that was hype. I really like. There's a bunch of like a panning fill almost that happened there. That was super dope. Well done, Patrick.
Yeah, and that is a Polymax preset called Clap Around.
That makes sense. That's exactly what it sounded like. So, all right. Well, listen, I've got a list of 5 names. We can only have 2 winners. So I'm going to ask you to let me know your favorite number between, or your 2 favorite numbers between 1 and 5.
All right. Well, my favorite number is pi, so 3.
All right.
And then I love the sound of a quintuplet in a musical piece, so I will pick 5 as well.
Beautiful. That means I have 2 winners. Everybody, now is the time. We're about to announce it. 2 winners of, let me switch to me. Let me switch to both of us so we can both be here and present. 2 winners of the Creative Edition bundle from Universal Audio. Shout out to Universal Audio for allowing you, Patrick, to be free for this stream and allowing me to give 2 people the copy of this bundle. The winners are Alan Guzman Jimenez, Jimenes, and Laura Reynolds. Congratulations, everybody. That's Alan Guzman Jimenez and Laura Reynolds. You are the winners of the Universal Audio Creative Edition bundle. It's a lot of plugins. It is so much fun. You're going to have a great weekend, let me tell you. To claim your prize, all you need to do is email support@pluginboutique.com with your name, what you won, and a copy of you logged in to your account here on YouTube as usual, but there's an additional step. Go ahead and sign up to Universal Audio's website. Sign up for a free account there and send us the email that you used there so we can get those plugins added right to your account and you can have a jolly good time using them. So with that, Patrick, is there any final thoughts before we wrap up?
I just want to thank you guys again and thank everybody that is watching and engaged in these synths. I do have to say that, on some of these years have elapsed since I worked with my teams on them, but they're my favorite synths. Bottom line, I like these more as a customer than I did as a designer.
Oh, absolutely fantastic. They're like your additional children.
In some way.
Yeah. All right. Well, again, thank you very much, Patrick. I know you're a busy person, and it means the world to us to have you come on and not only show us around these, but let us hear you, some of your playing, and get some of your knowledge about sound design with these incredible instruments. Thanks again to chat. You're awesome. Remember, stream next Wednesday, 10 a.m. Different day, different time than usual. But then after that, pretty much every Thursday, 5 p.m., we're going to be doing stuff till the end of the year. So subscribe, hit the bell, all that good stuff. And with that, I'm Joshua Casper for Plugin Boutique. That's Patrick Aurelio for Universal Audio. And we will see you in the next stream.
To the top, ragamuffin keeps striving in every way. Why? International, what they call me international. When me ride palm with them in the move, but the rhythm and I come down crucial. And me ride palm with them and then we sit down steady. Body me on the place, I with the one Jamal skinny. We are the general. We sit up on the open the mic incredible. I'm be right part of the move, but the rhythm I sit down steady. Every ragamuffin you do, I feel rock and follow me. You know you love her for your life. Hey. We jump up on the rhythm, make we ride it. We chat up on the mic and keep it international. Cause anytime we chop a mic, they call we give it a general. International, when me ride palm with them in the move, but the rhythm and I come down crucial. And me ride palm with them and then we sit down steady. Body me on the place, I with the one Jamal skin.